You ever wonder if he's just moved on? Or if he's sitting there, secretly hoping your name lights up on his screen again? That moment of silence after a deep connection can feel like a black hole. But here's the truth most people miss. Silence doesn't always mean he's over you. Sometimes it means he's scared. Scared you won't respond. Scared he misread everything. Scared to admit he still cares. So, what does he do? He watches your stories, likes a post, asks mutual friends how you've been, leaves the door just barely open with a vague "talk soon." That's not closure. That's hesitation disguised as distance. Maybe he sent a random "hey" one night, then vanished again. It wasn't meaningless. It was emotional fishing. His way of testing the water without risking too much. He's stuck between pride and longing, unsure if it's safe to want you back. And while he waits, he tells himself, if you wanted to talk, you would have texted. But what if he's the one who still cares and just doesn't know how to say it? If you've ever felt the ache of silence, this might not be about him forgetting you. It might be about him hoping you don't forget him. You ever notice how some people never really say goodbye? They don't slam the door shut. They just kind of drift. Maybe he didn't respond to your last message the way you hoped. Maybe he ended the conversation with a casual "talk soon" or a vague "hope you're doing well." And now, here you are, wondering if that was his polite way of saying he's done, or if maybe, just maybe, he's secretly hoping you'll text him again. Let me tell you something that most people don't realize. Silence isn't always closure. In fact, for some guys, silence is strategy. Not necessarily a manipulative strategy, but a comfortable one. See, there are men out there who genuinely don't want to lose you, but they also don't want to do the hard emotional work of keeping you. So what do? They leave the door open just enough for you to walk back through it. That little "talk soon," that's not nothing. That's not just courtesy. That's him dropping a subtle line into the water to see if you'll tug it later. It's emotional ambiguity. It allows him to avoid the discomfort of expressing vulnerability while still giving himself the option to feel connected to you later on. He wants to feel like you haven't fully walked away, because deep down, he's hoping you won't. Here's the interesting part. Most guys don't even realize they're doing this. It's subconscious. They're conflicted. Maybe he's not ready for something real. Maybe he's scared of commitment. Maybe he liked you, but didn't quite know how to fit you into the life he's currently living. But even with all that, there's a part of him that still wants to feel that pull from you, still wants to know that if he reached out again, you'd be warm, receptive, maybe even excited. So instead of fully disappearing, he keeps that emotional window slightly cracked open. Not enough to let in a relationship, but enough to let in some air. Enough to let in hope. Now this is where most people get stuck. They think, well, if he's still hoping I'll reach out, shouldn't I? Can I be the bigger person? Maybe he's waiting for a sign. But that's the trap, because what he's hoping for isn't always what's healthy for you. He's hoping for comfort, for validation, for reassurance that he still matters to you, even if he's not offering you something real in return. And if you answer that hope, all you're doing is giving him emotional oxygen without asking him to step up and be clear. So if you're sitting there thinking, is he hoping I'll text him again? The answer might very well be yes. But the more important question is, should you? Because the guy who really wants to build something with you, he's not leaving cryptic clues. He's not sending breadcrumb messages and hoping you'll decode his feelings. He's showing up with clarity. He's choosing you, not occasionally checking your vibe. If someone genuinely values you, they don't risk losing you just to protect their ego. They don't let days and weeks go by in silence while quietly hoping you'll do the work of connection. Hope isn't love, hope isn't effort, and silence, no matter how artfully disguised, is still absence. So what do you do with someone who's left the door cracked open? You close it with grace. Not out of anger, not out of but out of love for yourself. Because if you're the one who always walks through that half-open door, you're teaching him that effort doesn't matter, that showing up halfway is enough. And you deserve someone who meets you at the door, arms open, no games, no ambiguity. He might secretly hope you'll text again, but what matters more is that you stop secretly hoping. You'll become someone he's not, showing up as right now. And when you let go of that hope, you make space for someone new, someone whose door is already wide open, waiting. You haven't heard from him. Days have passed, maybe even weeks. No texts, no calls. But suddenly, he's watching your Instagram stories. He's liking an old post, maybe even leaving a random comment on something that feels out of character, like your pet photo from 3 weeks ago. And you're sitting there, phone in hand, thinking, why now? What does this mean? This is what I call digital presence with emotional distance. It's subtle, calculated, and yes, it's often deliberate. Because sometimes when a guy disappears from your messages, but reappears in your notifications, it's not random, it's not coincidence, it's his way of staying visible without committing to a conversation. He may not have the courage or clarity to text you directly, but that doesn't mean you're not on his mind. When someone's genuinely done with you, they're not checking your stories, they're not refreshing your feed, they're not lingering in the background, trying to stay on your radar without fully stepping back into your world. But when a guy is still emotionally attached, even slightly, he might not be ready to send that, "Hey, how have you been?" text, but he is going to make sure you notice he's still around. Why? Because that little notification, he liked your post, he viewed your story. It's his version of tapping you on the shoulder without having to say a word. It's non-verbal communication in a digital age. He's signaling interest while preserving his ego. He wants to know if you're still open to him, if you'll reach out, if you're thinking about him too. Let's be honest here. It's safer. It's safer to like a photo than to risk a rejection. It's safer to watch your story than to send a vulnerable message. For many guys, especially those who are emotionally uncertain or still processing the last interaction, this kind of low-effort visibility becomes the perfect hiding spot. He's not ghosting, but he's not engaging either. He's not ready for a full comeback, but he's not gone. And you know what's most confusing? It works. It plays with your mind. You start thinking, is he trying to reconnect? Should I reach out? Did he make a mistake letting me go? You begin to fill in the blanks that he's too afraid to write himself. And that's where we lose our power. Because the truth is, when someone wants to talk to you, they talk to you. They don't dance around you. They don't hope you'll notice their shadow and go chasing after it. They show up with their voice, their intentions, and their honesty. But when a guy is secretly hoping you'll text him, he might take the passive route. He stays just close enough for you to notice, but far enough to avoid taking responsibility for what comes next. So here's what I want you to understand. Just because someone is watching doesn't mean they're ready. Just because someone is present online doesn't mean they're present for you. Visibility is not vulnerability, and affection without action is just noise. You have to ask yourself, do I want a man who waits for me to make the move every time? Do I want to be undecoding every view, every like, every silence? Or do I want someone who's emotionally courageous enough to say, I miss you, I've been thinking about you, can we talk? That's what real interest looks like. It's direct, it's respectful, and it doesn't leave you guessing. Now, I'm not saying he doesn't care, he probably does. That's exactly why he's watching. But the way someone shows they care is through effort, not through digital breadcrumb. It's easy to like a photo. It's easy to watch a story, but showing up in your life, that takes something real. So the next time you notice him lurking online, but staying silent, don't jump to conclusions. Don't assume it's your job to reopen the door. Don't trade your self-worth for a few signs of passive attention. You deserve someone who walks through the front door, not someone who just lingers outside the window. And if he's secretly hoping you'll text again, let that hope stay with him until he's ready to earn your attention the right way. Let his silence say what his likes can't. You ever notice how sometimes a guy will completely vanish from your messages, but somehow, his name still finds its way into your conversations? You haven't spoken to him in weeks, maybe months. You've moved on, or at least you're trying to. But then a mutual friend casually says, oh, I ran into him the other day. He mentioned you. And it hits you like a quiet little wave you didn't see coming. That's not a coincidence. When a guy is secretly hoping you'll text him again, one of the most telling signs isn't what he sends to you, it's what he says about you to others. He's not texting you directly because that would make him vulnerable. It would mean putting himself on the line. But what he is doing is poking around the edges of your life through the people you both know. That's his safety net. Because if he says something to a mutual friend, there's a chance it gets back to you without him ever needing to take the risk of reaching out himself. That way, he still feels connected to you. He still feels present in your world. He gets to plant that seed, I was thinking about her, without watering it directly. And if it does reach you, it keeps him in your thoughts too. That's what he's really doing, keeping the thread alive without actually holding it. Sometimes it's subtle. He asks a friend how you're doing. He brings you up in a story. That reminds me of this one time she and I went there. He might not even say it like he's checking in, but trust me, he is. He's hoping your name being said out loud will somehow echo back to you. And here's the thing. This isn't always manipulation. It's not necessarily a game. In fact, in many cases, it's coming from confusion or fear. He might be wrestling with what to say, how to say it, or whether it's even worth reopening the line between you. He might not know if you're still interested or if reaching out will just lead to silence or rejection. So instead, he tries to send a signal through other people, hoping you'll decode it and do the hard part for him. But that's where you need to be careful. Just because he mentions your name doesn't mean he's ready to show up. You don't chase breadcrumbs hoping they lead to a full meal. If someone wants you back in their life, they know where to find you. You're not hard to reach. You're a text away. You don't need someone who almost calls, who kind of wonders, who sends messages through secondhand channels. That's not a declaration, it's hesitation, and I get it. When someone from your past starts circling again, even in this indirect way, it stirs something in you. It reawakens questions. You wonder, why is he bringing me up? Does he miss me? Is there still something there? But here's the truth. Missing someone is easy. Acting on it is what matters. Wanting you in theory means nothing if he can't pick up his phone and say it to you directly. So the real question isn't, does he secretly hope you'll text again? The question is, what does that hope really mean if he's not doing anything with it? He might be nostalgic. He might be lonely. He might be sitting there at night scrolling through your old texts, wondering how it all slipped through his fingers. But unless that hope turns into courage, unless it becomes a real step toward you, it's not your responsibility to chase it down. It's not your job to revive something just because someone almost reached for it. You deserve someone who doesn't need a middleman to express how they feel. Someone who doesn't whisper your name in someone else's ear and hope it finds its way to you. You deserve someone who is clear, who is brave, and who shows up when it counts. So if his name is coming up again, if his voice is traveling through other people and finding its way back into your head, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, is this just an echo or is it a real message? Because unless he's the one saying it directly to you, it's not a conversation, it's just noise. And you don't need noise. You need clarity. You need action. You need someone who texts because they want to, not because they hope you'll make the first move. If he really wants you, he won't be speaking through others. He'll speak to you. You know, a lot of people confuse silence with indifference. They think, well, if he cared, he would have reached out by now. But the truth is, people don't always stay quiet because they don't care. More often than not, silence means confusion. It means he's sitting with a bunch of unresolved feelings, not knowing what to do with them. And that's the thing no one talks about. We assume that if someone isn't charging forward, they must be walking away. But that's not always the case. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had a conversation with someone that ended on a weird note? Maybe there was some tension. Maybe it got emotional. Or maybe something was left unsaid. And then radio silence. You're left wondering what it meant. Did he not care? Did it matter to him at all? But here's what you might not realize. He's wondering too. He might be sitting there thinking, did I mess that up? Should I say something? Is it too late to reach out? When something ends awkwardly or even emotionally and there's no follow-up, it often means that person is overwhelmed. He might be afraid of what opening the door again will lead to. He might be thinking, if I reach out, what if she's cold? What if she ignores me? What if I say the wrong thing again? That kind of fear doesn't come from indifference. That comes from someone who still has feelings and doesn't know how to navigate them. You see, people like resolution. We like knowing where we stand. But when someone is in emotional limbo, when they still have feelings, still think about you, but aren't sure if reaching out is the right move, they do nothing. Not because they don't want to do something, but because they're paralyzed by too many conflicting thoughts. That's the real reason you haven't heard from him. It's not that he forgot about you. It's that every time he thinks about texting you, he goes back and replays your last moment together, analyzing it, overthinking it until he talks himself out of pressing send. And I know that's frustrating. You might be sitting on the other end thinking, well, if he wants to talk, he should just text. But we have to understand that people don't always operate with that kind of clarity or courage, especially when ego is involved, especially when emotion is involved. If your last interaction felt unresolved, if there were unspoken feelings or things that were left hanging in the air, he's probably not reaching out because he doesn't trust himself to fix it. He doesn't know how to pick it back up without risking getting hurt or hurting you again. Sometimes he's scared that if he sends that text, it'll open a floodgate of conversations he doesn't feel ready for. So instead, he tells himself, I'll wait. Maybe she'll text first. Maybe she's moved on. Maybe I should too. But deep down, he checks his phone. He wonders. He hesitates. And if he truly didn't care, he wouldn't be hesitant. He wouldn't be curious. He wouldn't keep showing up in subtle ways, liking something, watching a story, mentioning your name to a friend. The very fact that he's not reaching out but still showing signs means he's stuck in that emotional no man's land, still thinking about you, but unsure how to bridge the gap. It's a hard space to sit in because when someone's silent, we want to fill in the story. We want to make sense of it. And too often we fill that silence with the worst possible explanation. He doesn't care. It meant nothing. I was just a chapter he's already closed. But in reality, the more accurate story might be that he cared more than he knew how to handle. And now he's afraid of doing the wrong thing with those feelings. Here's what I want you to take away from this. Silence isn't always rejection. Sometimes it's reflection. Sometimes it's fear. Sometimes it's a storm of emotion he hasn't figured out how to voice. That doesn't mean you should wait around for someone who's unsure about you, but it does mean you shouldn't always interpret quiet as callous. Because some people are silent, not because they've moved on, but because they haven't figured out how to come back. And maybe he is hoping you'll text again, not because he wants to lead you on, but because he wants permission to re-enter, because he's scared of what happens if he tries and you're no longer there. And maybe that's not your responsibility to solve. Maybe the ball is in his court. But don't confuse his silence with a lack of caring. In many cases, it's the exact opposite. Sometimes the loudest part of someone's feelings is what they're not saying. He texts you, then disappears again. Now let's just pause right there because that behavior alone can throw your entire emotional rhythm off. One moment you're getting that ping little message from him, maybe something casual like, hey, just saw this place and it reminded me of you, or remember this song? And you feel it, that surge, that mix of excitement, confusion, maybe even hope. But then, nothing. He vanishes again. No follow-up, no momentum, no clarity. It leaves you wondering, why would he reach out just to go silent again? And I want to tell you, that kind of message is rarely innocent. It's not just him being polite or thinking of you in passing. It's what I call emotional fishing. Think about it like this. He's casting a line. That text, that little breadcrumb, is his way of dropping emotional bait into your world. He's wondering if you'll respond, if you'll bite, if you're still on the hook. And once he gets the confirmation that you're still there, still open, still thinking about him, he doesn't feel the need to reel anything in because he got what he came for, reassurance. That moment of attention, that brief reply from you, it tells him she's still available to me. And maybe he doesn't even do this consciously. This isn't always a guy rubbing his hands together saying, let me manipulate her today. A lot of the time, he genuinely misses something about the connection. He feels lonely or bored, or maybe he's just unsure about what he really wants. So what does he do? He sends out a low effort, low risk message and waits to see how you react. And let's be honest, we've all been there, where someone who hasn't shown up for us in the way we deserve still has the power to light us up with a single message. Weakness. That's emotional attachment. That's the imprint someone leaves on us when the connection felt real. But here's the hard truth. If someone reaches out to you and disappears again, they're not trying to build something. They're trying to feel something. There's a huge difference. One comes from intention, the other comes from impulse. A man who is serious about reconnecting won't stop at one text. He won't go quiet after throwing a memory your way. He'll stay present. He'll follow through. He'll want to know what's going on in your life, and he'll show it not just in what he says, but in what he does after he says it. So when a guy pops up like this, just long enough to stir your heart and then slips back into silence, you need to ask to yourself, what does this communication cost me? Because it always costs you something. It costs you peace. It costs you clarity. It costs you the emotional bandwidth. You could be investing in something real, something growing. And here's the deeper danger. Every time you respond to a man who disappears after texting, you teach yourself that hope is more important than evidence, that the potential of a connection matters more than the pattern you're actually seeing, that your feelings for him deserve more loyalty than his behavior has earned. That is how people get stuck. Now, I know what you might be thinking, but what if he's just scared? What if he's figuring things out? What if he does care and just doesn't know how to say it? And look, all of those things might be true, but here's what you need to remember. Someone's internal confusion is not your responsibility. You don't owe your emotional energy to someone who doesn't know what to do with it. You are allowed to protect your heart from people who don't know how to handle it. And if he really is scared or conflicted or going through something, the kind of man who is worth your time will come back with clarity, not breadcrumbs. He'll come back with ownership, not emotional fishing lines. So next time he texts you out of the blue, pause, breathe, look at the pattern, not the moment. Look at what he does consistently, not what he says when he's feeling nostalgic or lonely. Ask yourself, is this the start of something real or just another dip into the comfort of what once was? Because your time, your love, your energy, they are not for part-time participants. They are for people who show up, stay present, and mean it. And anything less than that doesn't deserve a reply. You see, one of the most misunderstood behaviors in dating is silence. We often interpret it as a lack of interest, a closed door, a full stop. But in many cases, especially when there's history or emotional tension, that silence isn't apathy. It's hesitation. It's the pause someone takes when they want something, but they're afraid to go after it. And more often than not, when a guy isn't texting you, it's not because he doesn't want to. It's because he's waiting for a sign from you. Guys, especially the ones who struggle with emotional vulnerability, will do this thing where they tell themselves, if she wanted to talk, she would. That sounds logical, right? But it's not always honest. What they're really doing is protecting their ego. They're avoiding the risk of rejection, of sending a message and being met with silence, or worse, a cold reply. So instead, they sit back and convince themselves that waiting is somehow the noble or respectful thing to do. Meanwhile, they're checking their phone more often than they'll ever admit. There's also something else that happens here, this internal battle between pride and curiosity. He wants to know if you still think about him, if you've moved on, if he still holds space in your world. But reaching out directly feels too exposed. It's like walking out into the middle of the street naked, vulnerable, unprotected. So what does he do instead? He waits, he watches, he thinks, maybe if she texts me, that's a green light. Then I can respond without looking desperate. This is the emotional equivalent of standing at the edge of the pool, hoping someone else jumps in first so you don't have to be the brave one. And here's the part that no one tells you. Some guys genuinely believe that not texting you is the respectful choice, especially if things ended in a way where they felt you needed space or clarity. They think, well, I don't want to disturb her life. I don't want to make it harder. If she's moved on, I don't want to get in the way. So rather than being honest and saying, hey, I miss you, but I don't know if I should reach out. They say nothing and hope you'll say something first. Now, I want you to think about how many times you've done this. How many times have you stopped yourself from reaching out, not because you didn't care, but because you were afraid of what the silence might mean, because you thought you might be bothering them, or because you weren't sure if they even wanted to hear from you. This is what's happening on both sides of the equation. You're sitting there wondering, is he over it? And he's sitting there thinking, does she even want to hear from me? You're both holding your breath, waiting for someone else to blink first. So yes, sometimes the silence isn't indifference. It's fear dressed up as patience. It's someone hoping they're still on your mind, but terrified to find out they're not. And that fear can be paralyzing, because to reach out is to risk. It's to admit you still care. It's to make peace with the possibility that someone has moved on while you haven't. Now, am I saying you should always be the one to break the silence? No. You have to read the context. You have to ask yourself what reaching out costs you. Is this someone who values you, who shows up for you, who would genuinely respond with care and honesty? Or is this someone who takes without giving, who only shows up when it's convenient? But what I am saying is, don't fall into the trap of thinking silence is always an answer. Don't assume that because he hasn't texted, he doesn't care. In many cases, he does. He's just waiting for that little sign that says it's safe, that he won't be ignored, that he won't be punished for caring. And that puts you in a place of power, not power to manipulate, but power to understand, to see past the games, the silence, the digital chess match we all play. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply recognize when someone else is afraid and decide if you're willing to meet them halfway. Because in the end, the people who care the most aren't always the ones texting first. They're often the ones who hope you will.